it out either through the banking system or directly to some other entrepreneur. So why would we want to take money that was going to be used to grow the economy and send it to Washington, where it's going to use it to undermine the economy?
All right, Peter, let me expand on that because, I had read your excellent, there's a hidden 9 in Herman Cain's plan today. I hadn't read this full article. Now I've actually had a chance. We were talking to scan over it a bit. And they're actually criticizing you in this, but they're saying you're endorsing his 9999 plan. But I follow you closely. I hadn't seen you endorse Cain's 999 plan.
Now, I haven't endorsed it, and I think it's a loser in the general election. If Cain gets the nomination with his 999 plan, it's going to come out that there's a fourth 9 in there. And, the public is going to reject it because they're not going to vote for higher taxes on themselves. But my whole point is it shows just how much of the tax burden the rich currently bear. I mean, if you're going to reduce the taxes on the upper income people so that it's the same as people that earn less money, you can't do that. So either you've got to massively cut government spending or you've got to raise taxes on the middle class in order to cut taxes. Okay. On upper income,
but if we don't let me quantify this.
Taxes, we're not going to get growth.
Let me quantify this because I had a student call me today, and he said, "You don't want to redistribute the wealth of the 1%. You're basically anti-American." But it wasn't reality based, and so quantify that. You're explaining to people if you cut the taxes on the rich, yeah, that would speed the economy up. But this plan actually increases it overall on the poor who aren't paying a lot of taxes right now, and that'll cause issues as well. That's what you're getting at, right?
But it's also increasing taxes on the middle class. Most people are going to get a tax hike under this plan. See, the real problem is government is too big. Government is too expensive. We have to cut government so that we don't have to raise taxes on anybody. In fact, if we cut enough government, we can lower taxes on everybody. But if we want all this government that we have now, it is very expensive. And we can't put the bill just on the rich because then the economy collapses. So if we want all this government, the truth is the middle class has got to pay for it. And people think that the rich are getting away with murder. Look, I'm paying about half my income in taxes right now. I don't know how much more I can take. Yeah, is it, they're trying to pretend that the rich are paying less in taxes than their secretaries. That's nonsense. And not only are the rich paying higher rates than their secretaries, but in absolute numbers, I mean, think about Warren Buffett. They're saying he's paying less rate than his secretary. They're saying Warren Buffett is paying 17%. Yeah, but he's paying like $10 million a year. I mean, his secretary might be paying a higher rate, but maybe she's only paying $10,000 versus his $10 million. But it's also a lie because Warren Buffett is the biggest shareholder of Berkshire Hathaway. He doesn't even take a salary. He works for free. So his income is Berkshire's income, and Berkshire Hathaway is paying 35% income tax. That's Warren's money. He's paying his taxes through Berkshire Hathaway.
Sure.
So not only is he paying a lot more in taxes than his secretary, but he's paying a higher rate. And anybody who says otherwise, including Warren Buffett, is lying.
Well, let's expand on that. Here in Texas, we have a stealth income tax. That's the franchise tax. I pay taxes on all the equipment, everything, and a percentage on my profits. And, I mean, it's taxes on top of taxes. So let me ask you this question. Why then do we see the ultra-rich, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and others? I mean, I have my answer for it. Why do we see them promoting higher taxes?
Well, Warren Buffett, he actually benefits from the estate tax because a lot of businesses have to be sold because they can't survive the estate tax. And then Warren gets to buy them up on the cheap through Berkshire Hathaway. So he has an interest in breaking up a lot of these businesses, even though it's a destructive tax. On the income tax, I don't know. Maybe he just wants to be liked. It's a lot easier to be liked if you adopt these liberal agenda. It's more difficult to have to explain to people why just taxing the rich is a bad deal for the middle class and the poor. I was down at Occupy Wall Street yesterday. We've got a video coming out from Reason TV. It'll be on YouTube next week. But all these people, the majority of people who are there that are mad, they're all blaming the rich. They think the problems emanate from taxes. I had one person say the reason we had the Great Depression was because the rich weren't paying enough taxes. That all the problems are because the rich aren't paying enough taxes. And if we just jacked up the taxes on the rich, that everything would be better. I mean, people don't understand that the reason the rich are rich is because they created the middle class. They're the ones that figured out what to produce. They created the jobs. They created the products that they're paying their fair share just by getting rich. Anything they pay in taxes is just gravy.
Well, Peter,
yeah.
But if the young college students that call me on the radio and disagree with what I'm saying, with what you're saying, will just look at history. Kennedy cut taxes in one bracket by 50%, the other 38%. Tax receipts the next year doubled. The ruling government class knows when you raise taxes, it always ends up destroying business and overall revenue down the line. So the question is, if this basic fact of economics is there, why then does the government class want it? The answer is control. You look at Warren Buffett, he knows that higher taxes on middle class and wealthy will be used in further banker bailouts of Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and others who invested in the derivatives. And I think in that lies the answer. You talked about him wanting to keep the estate tax to break up companies. That's it. The ultra-rich, in many cases, have an incentive through government to use regulations and insider deals. Take General Electric, moving jobs offshore, getting tax exemptions, but then always calling for higher taxes on the general public. I mean, I think it's that crony capitalist element that's involved in all of this that's sicking the working class.
They want higher taxes on all the people who are actually paying the taxes. Meanwhile, they're not paying any because they can escape them. And when we talk about raising taxes, Obama wants to raise taxes on the rich, and he cites Warren Buffett, but he wants to raise my taxes, and I'm already paying a lot higher tax than what he believes Warren Buffett is. I'm already paying 50%, and he wants to raise it. You know, what we need to do is look back at the 19th century. Look at how fast the U.S. economy grew. Look at the Industrial Revolution. Look at how much living standards rose percentage-wise without even all the technology we have today. We had much faster economic growth when nobody paid income taxes than we have today when everybody is paying all these income taxes.
Great point. That's like Ron Paul. He'll be on CNN, Fox, and they say, you want to get rid of the income tax. How will we have a government? And he says, this capital was built behind me, this whole system, and we didn't have this income tax. Let's look more at the 999 than briefly at what's happening in Europe, and then we'll let you go, Peter. Looking at 999, there's that payroll tax that anybody who actually has a real business in the real world knows is there, so it's 9999. But what about the danger of once, let's say Herman Cain was successful, once they got into the position of having the camel's nose under the tent flap, what happens then once they start trying to raise the different taxes? A, and B, what about the prospect of having the federal government now involved in sales taxes and VAT? We think we have a nightmare now with the IRS. What about this power grab with federal tentacles into everything?
Yeah, I mean, that's another risk that you give the government another revenue stream to exploit. But look, I think we risk higher taxes regardless, whether they get us through a sales tax or an income tax. And of course, you know, the sales tax is somewhat self-correcting as to abuse, which is what the founding fathers said, because if they jack that tax up too high, people won't buy. There'll be a black market that people will try to avoid it. So you can't put a sales tax too high or you're not going to have any sales to tax. But I have sympathy with the idea that, look, we want less government. We want to take away these revenue streams. I would love to replace the income tax with a sales tax. But yes, this layers it on top of it. I know Herman Cain's goal is to actually eventually get rid of the income tax and go to a total sales tax model. So that is the goal. But of course, you know what we say about the best laid plans, you know, what often happens to them. But I don't think that's really the best criticism of his plan. I think the real criticism is the hidden nine. You know, when you hear guys like Rick Romney arguing about, well, it's a federal sales tax on top of a state sales tax. I mean, so what? I mean, we got a federal income tax on top of a state income tax. So if we could get rid of the two income taxes and have two sales taxes instead, I think that's better. I mean, I you know, it doesn't bother me to pay a sales tax. I don't have to hire accountants. I don't have to keep records. I don't have to file forms. I just pay it. I don't even consider it. So I would much rather have the federal government taxing me on what I spend than on the income tax. Even if I ended up paying the same amount of tax, it'd just be a lot easier for me. And
sure. In fact,
we
what's
get
the
rid
number?
Of this whole compliance structure.
Well, that's what I was about to ask. Well, I forget the number. It's some gargantuan amount. How much do Americans spend every year complying and filing income taxes?
Oh, it's like at least $500 billion. And think about industries. Think about all the accountants. What a waste of time. You know, I'm in the brokerage industry. I have people coming up with all kinds of accounts, pensions, IRAs, KIOs, estate planning. All of this is to avoid the income tax. Just get rid of it and there's nothing to avoid. And then we don't have to waste all these resources doing things that we don't really need. We can use these resources productively. You know, we're in a gigantic economic hole now. We need everybody possible helping us dig our way out. You know, we don't want a bunch of accountants and lawyers getting in the way.
Peter, I've been asking the questions here tonight, but I want to get your view on Ron Paul and where his campaign is going, A. And then B, looking at Europe, we saw the dollar get hammered today, but Europe is in a lot of trouble. They haven't been able to get their, quote, deal to create this new super Eurozone that's going to attempt to raise taxes to pay off all these debts. So where do you see Ron Paul's campaign going, A, and B, what do you see happening in Europe and the U.S. economy?
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm hopeful that Ron Paul's campaign will catch on. I mean, right now, he's still hovering around 10%. So that puts him kind of ahead of the second tier, but still behind the top tier candidates. So he really needs to kind of break out. And it seems like everybody has been getting their turn in the limelight. First, it was Michelle Bachmann, and then her star faded quickly. Now we got Herman Cain. So maybe Ron Paul is going to have his day. I don't know. Hopefully he will. I know that as the race progresses, eventually some people are going to drop out. And Ron Paul is going to have the staying power because he does have, you know, very committed supporters. So his support is not that wide, but it's really, really deep. That gives him the staying power. Hopefully he can stay in it long enough to catch on. You know, I think Romney really shot himself in the foot by admitting on the last debate that the only reason he didn't want to hire illegals was because he was running for president and it would look bad. So that's going to come back and bite him. I think Rick Perry, you know, I mean, people, his star fizzled out pretty quickly, too. So Herman Cain's got some problems. Can Herman Cain really stay at the top? And if not, who's going to replace him? I mean, maybe Newt Gingrich. I don't know. But Ron Paul, you know, he's got a shot at it. So we got to stick in there. He's got to keep plugging away. Maybe if we can get some more media coverage. You never know. You know, I think he can beat Obama, so we just got to get him the nomination. But I still would have to say it's still, you know, a long shot, but it's not no shot. Anyway, getting to your question about the euro and the dollar, look, I think the euro is going to rally. I think that, you know, as bad as the problems are in Europe, they are worse here. I'm convinced of that. And so I think we've got bigger problems for the dollar, and we might get a big rally in the euro. We're at a key level right here, the way we closed out the week in the currency markets, the stock markets, global stock markets. If they move up on Monday, we can have a huge rally in stock markets, and we could have a huge decline in the dollar. That doesn't mean I think there's going to be a new bull market in stocks. I think that we're going to run into resistance up around, 12,400 or 500 in the Dow. And then I think there's going to be another problem that's going to come up and it's going to cause another sell-off. I think we move sideways, but I think we got a lot of people that were too negative, got short in that last sell-off last month. And I think that we're going to get a rally. Now, if we sell off on Monday big, then, you know, because we're right at the resistance right now. We're right where we should sell off. But looking at the action in the market this week, you know, we haven't had the sellers up at this high end. There's been buying coming in, and I think we're going through the overhead resistance. So I think the markets look like they want to go up, and the dollar looks like it wants to go down. I think the wild card is going to be the bond market, because the bond market could also get beat up a little bit here if the stock market goes up and the dollar goes down. That could set up potentially the next crisis, maybe late in the year, early next year, where if the dollar and the bond market are falling a lot, that could, you know, be problematic. Right now, I think people look at a weak dollar as a good thing. I don't think it's good, but I think Wall Street thinks it's good. But eventually, they might think it's too much of a good thing. And instead of worrying about the euro, we might actually start worrying about the dollar.
Going back to Ron Paul, I agree with your analysis. We've seen the stars rise of people like Perry, people like Bachmann, and then fade. Ron Paul has really got the issues. He's got the gravitas. He's in that 10, 15-point range. And if he can just stay in there, They had a big scientific study come out last week that he's being ignored more than any candidate. If they gave him fair coverage, he would be the front runner. And so he's got a real potential. You know, if this was the Indianapolis 500, he's in third place.